And then they got an old, like a barracks room that she's gonna stay in. We had to go look at that too, and they said there's bats.
Oh,
We had to
no.
see what this was. And she picked it right out, yeah, she said, oh, it's that one right there. And yeah, it has a big white porch on the front and everything, but it's like 1817 buildings, but,
Right.
and there's other cars there that, there's students there.
Sure.
You ready, Angie?
I am.
She said it's quiet.
Okay, we'll call the P and Z meeting to order here on Wednesday, May 10th. Roll call, Angie.
Myrna Wagner.
Here.
Dean Field.
Here.
Mark Klein Wiltering.
Here.
Tim Potabom.
Yes.
Bailey Francis.
Here.
Fred Grine.
Yes.
Dennis Vandenhall.
Here.
Chris Knuckles.
Here.
Article 2, approval of minutes of March 14, 2023. Do we have a motion to approve those?
I'll make a motion to approve. I'll second.
Do you need to roll call on that?
Wagner.
Yes.
Field.
Yes.
Klein Wiltering.
Yes.
Potabom.
Yes.
Francis.
Yes.
Grine.
Yes.
Vandenhall.
Yes.
Knuckles.
Yes.
Article 3, application for voluntary annexation of 8.8 acres, Jeffrey and Brooke Granstra, 2 parcels. Sam, want to give us a little brief history there?
I can. So first of all, this is a request for voluntary annexation. And interestingly, the way Iowa code is written, voluntary annexations do not technically get voted on by the Planning Commission, but I have it set up that way for you to vote on it, because obviously the next item, if you disagree with the annexation and you decline to rezone it, then it's not going to be annexed anyway. So I decided just to put it on for a vote, but just so you know, technically under state code, for whatever reason, annexations go directly to city council. And your role is really the zoning. So this property is just north of the interchange of New 60 and 2nd Avenue or Old 60. Currently, we got a map here. So Todd's got it highlighted for us. And the vision is to bring it into city limits, and assuming Sioux County Board of Supervisors and City Council support it, then it would ultimately then be zoned. The request is to zone it as arterial commercial. So, Jeff, did you have anything to add? Covered okay?
Any other comments from the audience? Pretty straightforward. Any questions from the board?
Yeah. Just, what is it, why do you need, why are we rezoning? I mean, why are we annexing? I mean, not the rezoning, I understand that part, but what's the difference?
So Jeff and Chris, feel free to jump in. I'll give it a shot. So the applicants desire, number one, to be subject to the city zoning jurisdiction rather than Sioux County. They feel that there's a opportunity, or they prefer to work with our zoning jurisdiction. And we saw the same type of request, if you remember the trade winds, that they also, the annexed trade winds over by the apartments over by NCC, they had that same, one of the things driving their request as well. The other is that it opens up the door down the road for participation in the city's urban renewal processes. Currently, this land is not part of an urban renewal zone, and that would take quite some time to put in, but it paves the way for grant applications and easier access to city utilities, and that type of thing. Does that cover it okay?
And where are the current city limits?
Todd, can you,
So this purple line, it goes to the midpoint of that blacktop and out to the city limit.
okay.
Just around the south edge of the maintainer property. I move approval of that.
Do we have a second?
I'll support.
Any other
Yeah.
comments, questions? Angie?
Knuckles,
Yes?
Vandenhall,
Yes.
Brine,
Yes.
Francis,
Yes.
Potabom,
Yes.
Simultry,
Yes.
Field,
Yes.
Wagner,
Yes.
Article 3, rezoning of the 2 parcels from agricultural to arterial commercial. Sam, you want to give us a little background on that?
Well, currently, the way annexation works is the property comes into the zoning designation that is closest to what it is now, which is easy in this case because it's ag to ag. So the request is to take it to arterial commercial, which is a zoning designation that makes sense. It's a key corridor, so having it zoned heavy or light industrial maybe isn't the best zoning designation for this, so arterial commercial makes the most sense. And then if they want to put, more storage units, et cetera, similar to what's there now, then they would need to come to the Board of Adjustment for a special exception. Steve, anything to add? Okay. Anything for you two to add? No.
Anybody else? Comments? Anything from the board?
I move to approve that.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any other comments or questions? Angie?
Simultry,
Yes.
Potabom,
Yes.
Francis,
Yes.
Brine,
Yes.
Vandenhall,
Yes.
Knuckles,
Yep.
Field,
Yes.
Wagner,
Yes.
Article 5, amendment for zoning requirements of elevators in apartment buildings. Sam, is this something is kind of information or not, or something we would act on?
This is something that we'd be seeking your action on. So here's the background on this. So it's important when we're drafting policy to look forward, but it is okay to look back to the extent of learning what's happened in the past and then using those situations to address the best way to move forward. So Sheldon does not have building inspections. We do not have building codes. We follow the state codes, and one of the state codes is that elevators in multi-residential housing are not required at 3 stories or less. And so what this proposes to do is to, in the section of residential dwelling standards, is to require elevators starting at 3 stories. There's a reasonable grandfathering in for apartments that are already built. An example that I can think of would be the Smith Apartments on 7th Avenue, unless they were being significantly expanded to the point where, the value was it 50% or more, then they wouldn't need to worry about an elevator. I think this is something that council members have expressed an interest in, something that I'm interested in, and I believe it's the right thing to do when you look at the dynamics of our community, and that we've had the village around for a long time. We have a higher proportion of people with disabilities who live here. We want to be welcoming, and one of the, it's the one demographic you can join over lunch hour, right? And it's also and it's not just about who lives in apartment buildings, it's about who lives in them. So there are other ways for ADA compliance, having compliant apartments on the first floor, which, for example, Prairie Trail Village already has. But this is simply planning for the future. Phase 2 of Prairie Trail Village have already voluntarily agreed to put in an elevator for their next phase of, I believe it's 38 units. But I think this is something worth considering.
Do they have one, the present one, Sam?
No.
Sam, it's 2 stories or greater, so anything
No.
with 3 levels? Or is
Yeah.
it required on 2 stories?
It's not required on 2 stories. It'd be three
So you can
stories,
use-
3 stories or greater.
So lift chairs, that kind of stuff, you can use them on a 2-story?
Yep.
Then, or you don't need them? I know the apartment buildings in Sioux Falls, a lot of them, they don't have elevators in them, and they're, 3 or 4 levels. And I was kind of surprised with that when I got there, and we moved, and I said, "Where's the elevator?" They said, "There isn't one."
So how come we don't do it over, 1 story? So if you're not on ground, you get an elevator to the next story.
I believe that you could. I guess we're bringing forward what we believe has a pretty strong consensus, but that certainly is open for discussion.
Probably on a 2-story like that, they do most of the ADA would be on the 1st floor. 2nd floor would be more just stairs, and to keep cost in mind. Nothing against you, Fred.
How would this work on an existing building? If you had a 3-story building, it sounds to me like if you made a major improvement, you would have to install this then?
Right. So these, the regulations would not be, according to, here, reading right out of the new code, would not be retroactively enforced to existing multifamily that perform maintenance, make improvements, or provide additions onto existing multifamily building, so long as such improvements or additions do not exceed 50% of the value of the existing building prior to improvements. If such improvements exceed 50% of the value of the existing multifamily building and such structure is 3 stories or more, then it shall comply with these provisions. Appeals, though, would be allowed to the Board of Adjustment, so they could come and state a hardship. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
So that's state code, Sam?
What's that?
Have the state redid
No,
their
that would be
code?
what we're proposing here.
So what's the state, you said shall follow the state code?
State code says 4 stories and above require an elevator. Anything greater than 3 stories,
So this is exceeding the state code?
it is. And it also matches other communities' codes. So the apartment building that was built here, that same structure was put in Orange City and has an elevator at the 3rd story. So,
And we don't here?
no.
How many 3 stories or above do we have in town?
Not very many. 2 right now, maybe. Part of your role is planning decades out too, right? So, there's no urgency at all on this. If you want to continue it and have more conversation, or you can certainly do that too.
So if there's apartments in the basement, is that 1st story? Then ground story? Ground floor is the 2nd story?
I don't believe this building is.
So while you're walking up and processing that question, it seems that if you have 1 level, and it's properly egress, you can have apartments down there. That would obviously, to me, as one who signs the permit.
Yeah, and I
Count
don't-
as a story.
I don't believe the intent of the ordinance is to count basements and then a first floor and a second floor, because there's a multitude of old houses in town that would qualify under that criteria. And this ordinance was not intended to affect those types of structures. So, that would be my answer in short to that.
They're saying anything at ground level, basically counts,
I would say 3 stories above grade.
right?
And is that 3 stories with apartments in it, or is that 3 stories? So if your house has 2 levels and an attic, plus a basement,
Says apartments here, right?
Apartments and commercial.
but so,
Multi-family.
Apartment.
If somebody come in and they had a habitable space in an attic, and it was considered a 3rd floor, they would likely fall exempt under the non-conforming requirements. Now, if they had a house that's valued at $150,000 and they wanted to put a $100,000 addition onto it, then yes, there's a possibility that they would be required to put an elevator in, because they're substantially improving an existing 3-story dwelling.
But if it's single residential use, even though it might be in multi-residential zoning, there's no way.
If it's for single-family use,
Right.
absolutely not. No,
Right.
no. But we're talking about these old 2.5-story houses that are chopped up into 4, 5, 6 apartments, whatever. You know, and some of them might cram an apartment into an attic. The difficult part is, you know, Sheldon, like a lot, probably 95+% of the communities in Iowa, don't enforce building codes. So we don't even know if that habitable space in that attic is considered a legal habitable space. That's a whole other can of worms. But, you know, with that being said, it would be, you know, reviewed by city staff. But the only instance, I mean, we're looking at hypotheticals completely, but it would have to be an old 3-story house that had defined apartments, defined as multifamily residential, in a multifamily residential zoned area, and if it's already existing, it would have to have substantial improvements in excess of 50% of its value in order to trigger the elevator issue. And that's the only circumstance I could envision that happening in.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any other comments out there? What is the pleasure of the board? Do you want to act on this today, or you want to think on it?
I'd like to think on it longer.
I second that. I don't know if that's how this works, but I agree.
That was just a comment, so
Yeah.
we can make a motion that, say we postpone it, and so I can spend some time thinking on it.
Any motion to table it then?
To the next meeting.
Sure.
Angie?
Wagner,
Yes.
Field,
Yes.
Klein Wiltering,
Yes.
Potabom,
Yes.
Francis,
Yes.
Grine,
Yes.
Vanden Hoff, Knuckles.
Yep.
Sam, we'll put that on the next meeting's agenda.
Sounds good.
6, commissioner comments and city manager's report.
All right, so my, first of all, is there anything from the commissioners? Okay, so I'll jump into my item. So not asking for a vote today, this is just a conversation. So attached to the agenda is a notification letter, and is not meant to be comprehensive. It was the 6 properties I could think of off the top of my head, and there are others. but I have had conversations with city officials in Lamar's, and there is one of our council members had received a copy of this ordinance too from a citizen here, and was interested too in this concept. I think it's worth considering because there's been discussions over recent years of having building inspection codes, rental inspection codes, and property maintenance codes. All three of those codes are very intensive in terms of the staffing and manpower that it takes to enforce those and legal costs. And in the case of rental inspection codes, there's been some litigation on that, and so I think that this is a good way to address vacant buildings. It gives the city another tool. Currently, we have Chapter 145, which is the Dangerous Building Code, and it's what I would describe as a quote end of life, end of the road type of code when you know that it's in bad shape just by riding by. 5 of the 6 properties in the letter, you wouldn't really know that they're in. We shouldn't assume that they're in terrible condition on the inside, but we know that they're vacant based on observation. So I think we might have somebody here to talk about this, but just so you know, we're not singling out any property in particular today. We're just looking at the potential of adding another tool to the toolbox. You can open it up for comment, since you might have somebody who'd like to talk.
Yep, is there comments from somebody that, you want to step up to the mic and state your name, please?
My name is Barb Marino. This property actually belongs to my son, and he has since moved out of town about 5 years ago. And he made a trade for a camper to some guy here in town, and he's the guy that's not taking care of the place. I still have the title to the property, but it's in my son's name. I would like to totally be done with it, but my son doesn't want to go back on the deal he made with a friend. So, is that ever going to be zoned for housing out there on South 5th Avenue? What's going to happen with I know there's a guy that farms around there that would like to have it also.
Which property are we speaking?
1302 South 5th Avenue.
If I might.
Go ahead, Sam.
That entire neighborhood is zoned, Barb, residential now, residential multiples. So it is properly zoned.
Okay,
The issue is not a zoning issue.
okay.
The issue is, and it's really not a zoning code issue. The issue at this point is a maintenance issue, and that the property has been empty for a long time. So let's skip to the end and assume a worst case scenario where the city comes in and goes through the process. There's a lot of due process involved in tearing down somebody's house.
Right.
So it wouldn't happen overnight, but let's just assume we're going to do that. And let's assume that it costs $15,000 to do it. That is my guess based on what I've seen with other properties. And we would then assess the property, and just like property taxes. And so then it would have to be paid back.
Would my son still own the land then?
Well, whoever owns the land now would continue to own the land per what's at the county recorder's office.
Right.
So
that would be my son.
currently, Trenton does own, is listed as the owner.
Right.
So, maybe if you want, we can talk for a few minutes after
Yeah, I gotta
after
get
the
going
meeting, but
I gotta get going to a
Okay.
ball game, but, yeah, I feel like my hands are tied too. I'd just like to be done with it. I would like to bulldoze it down. But, I
have Have you been inside it? Is it in pretty
Not
bad?
lately.
Is it in
It's
pretty
not-
bad shape
yeah,
inside?
Yep, it is.
You think
I was
it-
hoping the other guy that hauled his junk over there would be here today, and we could come to some kind of agreement, but he didn't show up, so.
The other guy that hauls his junk over there isn't the same guy that he's got the agreement with?
Yes, it is,
the same
it
thing?
is.
Okay.
So if you go on demolition it, all his stuff goes away too? I mean, he's probably got the same letter I got, correct? So he's got how many days to get his crap off of there?
It's just a courtesy letter, and my agenda was to call attention to the issue, right? And hope that people who receive the letter would
Yeah,
be
and I'm on the
interested.
same page you guys are. I
Yeah.
just want it gone. But I gotta get my son to sign it over to me, I guess.
That would be,
That's
that would be my advice.
Yeah,
But,
okay.
yeah, he's still the legal owner.
Yeah. So, I
If-
just wanted
If
you
you
guys
want
to
to
know.
if you want to reach out to him and tell him I'd like to visit with him, and I'd like to talk to him.
I had someone else just come to my door a month ago and wanted to buy the place and redo it all.
Yeah. Well,
Can't get my son talked into it.
it's a platted grandfathered acreage in town with city utilities, and it's definitely got some value. And
There's a septic tank on it too, so that would have to be dealt with.
right.
So, I just wanted you guys all to know that I'm on your side. So,
Okay.
I'll talk to him again and
Okay.
see what I can do.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Barb.
Thank you.
Thank you. So what action do we need to take on this, Sam? It says discussion only.
None. I was just taking your temperature to see what you thought of this concept. There's been nothing drafted. There's nothing to vote on.
Okay.
And
Sam, I have a question. The correspondence from the city of Lamar's deals with like their historic downtown area, and the examples that you've given us here in Sheldon are all residential properties. So connect the dots for me between what's going on in Lamar's and what your thoughts are here in Sheldon.
well, I took a bit of a logical leap in talking to Lamar's. You know, I asked them, well, is there a reason why you didn't extend this to residential neighborhoods? And they're kind of wishing that they had, and they believe that that would have been a good move for them. Our issues downtown, frankly speaking, now that the HC Lane building issue is hopefully off our plates, we don't really have much for downtown issues. There's a few, but not much. But I believe we have an issue with, you know, the list here, and maybe a few others that need to be addressed. Housing's very tight here, and what really keyed me in to Lamar's discussion, what I liked what they had to say, is that they said as soon as this discussion started happening in Lamar's, there were several people that sold their buildings, transferred their buildings, started fixing them up, and that's my agenda. If we can talk about it and not even have to pass anything, and people start taking care of addressing this stuff, or these issues, then I'm okay with not passing more rules.
And what is different between the dangerous building code and what you're talking about with the neglected or abandoned?
So the code, the idea that Lamar's has is you need to register your empty building and show that it is inhabitable and it isn't declining in the health of the building. A dangerous building code is you observe, using HC Lane as an example, you know that the utilities have been off forever. You can see that the back wall has issues, and so you send out letters. In the case of HC Lane several years ago, I invited the fire marshal to town, and that helped get things going. But as I said earlier, a dangerous building code is really an end of the road code. You know that things are bad, know that it needs to be demolished. And then you use the code to file an affidavit with the court, and you try to get an administrative warrant and get in, take pictures, and try to knock it down and assess the property. So we've used dangerous building code with the Wreck Bowl property, and then we ultimately ended up acquiring that for tax sale. Burton Johnson's property would be another example, but that was in tax sale, so we acquired it that way. But this isn't about acquiring people's properties. It's simply about dangerous building code. If you know that it's in bad shape, Pucci's building would be another one. If you know it's in bad shape, then you can go try to get an administrative warrant and get it knocked down. But it is not a preventative code. It's the end of the road. And this would be more
What you're proposing
preventative.
is more preventative.
Mhm.
Okay.
But it's also more regulation, but it is less intrusive, Myrna, than building maintenance code or property maintenance codes, building inspections, and the like. So it is not as intrusive, and it's easier for staff to manage.
So no action needs to be taken? Just, you're looking for comments?
No, how about I do this? I'll put it on the next agenda, and
Do we gotta vote on? What do we gotta vote on?
there's no
here?
need to vote on.
Okay.
This is just a report.
Can
Okay.
I ask one more question? What's the definition of unoccupied for 1 year, and how do you prove that? If I got mail coming to the place, this property, Barb was just talking about.
Would that be like
Prove it's
if
unoccupied.
the utilities are turned on? No, it
Yeah,
could be no electricity, no water.
That's one of the factors. There's several,
Yeah, there's a bunch of things listed, but one of the criteria is unoccupied or nobody operates business in there for more than 1 year. But other things are easy to prove, but I could just see us, buy Snowbird 10 months a year or 11 and a half months a year in Florida, but I still have a house in Sheldon. And I'm guessing someone is being unreasonable, but could claim that. And it's hard to prove I don't know if there's a definition of unoccupied. I don't see it written here. I might be missing it, but.
yeah, it would definitely have to be tailored for residential application.
Yeah, and with no inspections, we don't have a mechanism to prove anything, so we just want to, if we were going to move forward, I would
Yeah.
want to consider that.
Definition.
And something enforceable that somebody can't just weasel out of if that's the case.
Any other comments, questions? Otherwise, Sam will bring it next meeting. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Full support.
Angie?
Wagner,
Yes.
Field,
Yes.
Simultrink,
Yes.
Potabom,
Yes.
Eldersma,
Yes.
Brine,
Yes.
Vandenhall,
Yes.
Knuckles.
Yes.
Adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Mark, what is going on with your hand? It's like they're watching to see if something's broken.
They are. I cut it here in the planter, plant is on there, 3 stitches, pretty deep. And you can see it's swollen out. So yeah, now there's,
So when you cut it, then how long till the infection started?
yeah, well, it started swelling. I cut this Friday